Hello everyone and welcome to the next session on ReactJS routing. Introduction to React Router DOM. Welcome to our session on React Router DOM. React Router DOM is a standard library for routing in React. It enables navigation among views of various components in a React application, allows changing the browser URL, and keeps the UI in sync with the URL. Why use React Router DOM? React Router DOM is essential for building single-page applications with navigation. It helps manage routes in a declarative way, providing a seamless user experience by enabling client-side routing. Setting up React Router DOM. To use React Router DOM in your project, you need to install it via npm. Run the following command in your terminal. Next, you need to wrap your application in a browser router component, typically done in your index.js file. Understanding route. The route component is the core of React Router. It renders a UI component based on the current URL. Path attribute specifies the URL path. Component attribute renders when the path matches. We'll discuss the exact and strict attributes in the route module of React Router DOM. The exact attribute ensures that the route matches exactly, not partially. This is particularly useful when you have similar routes and want to ensure that only the exact path renders the component. For example, in this example, the home component will only be rendered when the URL path is exactly /, not when it is /home or /about. The strict attribute adds trailing / sensitivity to your routes. This means that a route with a trailing / will be treated differently from one without. Here's an example. With the strict attribute, the about component will only be rendered if the URL path ends with a trailing / like /about/, not /about. Understanding switch. The switch component is used to group multiple route components. It renders the first child route that matches the current location. Exact attribute ensures that the route matches exactly. Understanding redirect. Next, let's understand the redirect component. The redirect component is used to automatically navigate users from one route to another. This is useful for handling deprecated paths or implementing default routes. In this example, any navigation to /old-path will automatically redirect to /new-path, ensuring that users always end up at the correct route. Understanding link. The link component is used for navigation. It renders a navigational link that lets the user navigate to different routes in the application. ToAttribute specifies the URL to navigate to. Using NavLink. Next, we cover the NavLink component. The NavLink component is similar to the link component but with additional styling features for active links. This means you can apply specific styles to the link when it matches the current URL. The active class name prop allows you to define a class that will be applied when the link is active, providing visual feedback to the user on the current route. This is particularly useful for creating navigation menus where the current page should be highlighted. You can also use inline styles with the active style prop to apply specific styles when the link is active. Here's an example. This will make the link bold and change its color to red when the /about route is active. Customizing NavLink. Beyond just active class name and active style, you can customize the NavLink component further with additional props and conditions. Exact matching. By default, NavLink will match partially. You can ensure it matches the exact path using the exact prop. isActiveProp. The isActiveProp is a function that allows you to add custom logic to determine if the link is active. This can be useful if you need more control over the active state. Dynamic paths. You can dynamically set the toProp based on your application state or props. This allows for flexible navigation structures. Using useRouteMatch. The useRouteMatch hook is used to access the match object, which contains the information about how a route path matches the URL. The useRouteMatch attribute returns the match object for the current URL. Let's create the components for our application: Home, About, Contact, and Services. In this slide, we create a simple functional component called Home. This component returns a heading element displaying Home page. We import React to use its functionality. Define a functional component Home. The component returns an h2 element with the text Home page. Finally, we export the Home component to use it in other parts of the application. Next, we create another functional component called About. This component returns a heading element displaying About page similar to our Home component. Now, we create a Contact component. Like the previous components, it returns a heading element displaying Contact page. The Services component is a bit more complex. It uses the useRouteMatch hook for React Router DOM to handle nested routes. Import React and specific components from React Router DOM, route, link, and useRouteMatch. Define the Services component. Use the useRouteMatch hook to get the current path and URL. Return a div containing a heading and a list of links for nested routes. Each link uses the URL to navigate to a nested route. Use the route component to define a nested route for displaying specific services. The nested route renders the service component when matched. Within the Services component, we define a nested service component that displays the requested service based on the URL parameter. Define the service functional component. Use the useParams hook to extract the service ID parameter from the URL. Return an h3 element displaying the requested service ID. Finally, export the Services component, which includes the nested service component. Let's set up routing in our app.js file using the components we just created. In this example, we import route, switch, and link from React Router DOM. We define 4 routes: Home, About, Contact, and Services. Define the app component which contains the navigation menu and routes. Use link for navigation without page refresh. Use switch to ensure only one route is rendered at a time. Define routes for Home, About, Contact, and Services components using route. The routes component is used to group root components and render the first one that matches the current URL. Next, we'll explore the key features of React Router DOM. First, declarative routing. React Router DOM allows you to define your routes in a clear and readable way, making your code easy to understand and maintain. Instead of imperatively specifying how the app navigates, you simply declare what the app should render based on the URL. Next, nested routing. This feature lets you create nested routes, which are essential for building more complex user interfaces that require multiple levels of navigation. For example, a blog post might have a main route for the blog and nested routes for individual posts. Then we have dynamic routing. With React Router DOM, routes can be dynamic, meaning they can change based on data or the application state. This flexibility allows you to render different components or views based on the dynamic parts of the URL, such as parameters or query strings. Route guards are another powerful feature. They allow you to control access to certain routes, ensuring that only authorized users can view specific pages. This is particularly useful for creating protected routes in your application, such as admin dashboards or user profiles. Lastly, custom transitions. You can animate route changes to enhance the user experience, providing smooth and visually appealing transitions between different views. This can be done using CSS transitions or JavaScript libraries like React Transition Group. Next, we'll explore the useParams hook. The useParams hook is used to extract parameters from the URL. This is particularly useful for dynamic routing where the path includes parameters. For example, in this example, useParams extracts the service ID from the URL, allowing the component to display dynamic content based on the URL parameter. Now, we'll discuss the use history and use location hooks. First, the use history hook. This hook allows you to navigate programmatically. You can push a new path onto the history stack, effectively changing the URL without needing a link. Here's an example. In this example, clicking the button will programmatically navigate to the /new-path route. Next, the use location hook. This hook provides access to the current location object, which contains information about the URL. For instance, the use location hook helps you get details about the current route, such as the path name, search parameters, and hash. Finally, we look at some advanced routing concepts. Route guards are used to protect routes from unauthorized access. You can create a private route component that checks for authentication before rendering the desired component. Here's an example. In this example, if the user is not authenticated, they are redirected to the login page instead of the protected route. Next, custom route rendering. Instead of just specifying a component, you can use the render prop for more control over what gets rendered. For example, this approach allows you to pass additional props to the component and add custom logic before rendering. In conclusion, React Router DOM provides a powerful and flexible way to handle routing in React applications. By understanding the basics of routing, nested routes, and the use of key props for optimization, you can create dynamic and responsive web applications. That's all for this session. Thank you.